Good evening. Thank God it's Friday. Jimmy here in Chicago. Hope everybody's staying safe and doing well. Got a big weekend here in Chicago. We got the Chicago Blues Fest going on in Grant Park. That's the largest blues festival in the country. I go every year. And this Sunday, the legendary Buddy Guy is going to be performing. That's right, Buddy Guy from 7 to 9 p.m. I highly recommend coming downtown, checking out Buddy Guy. A lot of characters you'll see at the Blues Fest, as you can imagine. And then up north, also going on in Old Town, between North and Division Street on Wells, you got the Old Town Art Fair. That's one of the best festivals in the summer. Got a lot of good food, a lot of really cool art, entertainment, bands, DJs, and a lot of women galore. So if you're into day drinking and doing a little raging, I highly recommend checking out the Old Town Art Fest. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter what night you go. And then for more of a pride, you got the festival going on in Andersonville. Another good festival, good entertainment, a lot of food, a lot of good people watching. All three fests I highly recommend. But before I head out for tonight, before I head out for dinner, I'm going to talk about, we're going to go back to the history of Chicago outfit in probably half a dozen major federal trials that destroyed the Chicago outfit. I've been to probably 4 or 5 of the 6. And these trials, like, for example, the trial we're going to talk about tonight, Operation Strawman, back in the early 1980s, that sent away top bosses of the Chicago outfit, Kansas City, Cleveland, Milwaukee. Then fast forward early 1990s, my first federal trial was the Gus Alex Trial. Gus Alex was like 76 years old at the time. They finally pinched him on a bullshit extortion case. The jurors believed a scumbag, low-life murderer like Lenny Patrick on the stand. How they found him credible, I still wonder about that till this day. Lenny Patrick actually committed perjury on the stand, got away with it. But when they convicted Gus Alex, that was another huge victory for the government, following up on their major successful victory in Strawman. I mean, the prosecutors really knocked it out of the park. When they lost Gus Alex, they lost a lot of their political connections, which separated Chicago from crime families in New York, Philly, Detroit. Chicago had all the political connections, right? Aldermen, senators, congressmen, people even up to the White House. So when Gus Alex was sent away, that devastated the Chicago outfit. Then the government wasn't done. Shortly after that, they indicted the Sam Carlisi crew. Sam Carlisi, boss of the Chicago outfit, underboss, little Jimmy Marcel, his right-hand man, Tony Zizzo, and his Cap Regine #1 soldier, Anthony the Hatch, and a couple of the Badavalente guys, all got convicted. Another major blow to the Chicago outfit. Then you had that low-life, corrupt cop, crooked lawyer, Bob Cooley. He was like a mob lawyer, right? He actually wore a wire and testified against the mob, testified against some of the Taylor Street guys. But it was his testimony in cooperation that brought down the powerful First Ward. That was John DiArco, Pat Marcy, Alderman Fred Rohde. I went to the Alderman Fred Rohde trial. Pat Marcy was too sick to stand trial. But when the First Ward was convicted, they lost all their political power in the city. They controlled everything in the city and a lot of things in the state. When they lost that, the outfit was pretty much done, out of business, right? No longer could they corrupt police officers and judges and lawyers and businessmen and do things the way they've done for years. Those days were gone. So Bob Cooley's cooperation, Operation Combat, destroyed the Chicago outfit. And again, they weren't done. Follow that up with Good Ship Lollipop Trial, right? In the 90s. They locked up Rocky's entire crew. That was Rocky and Felice, Sally D, Louis Marino, Gabit, Bobby Bellavia, Bobby Salerno, maybe one or two other guys I'm forgetting. They all were convicted, mostly based on that Chomo pedophile B.J. Jehoda. He's another one that as soon as they put the handcuffs on him, he decided to flip, cooperate, and actually wear a wire on all his good friends. Another major blow to Chicago outfit. After that, they brought down the hammer with the Family Secrets trial. You lost Joe Lombardo, Frank Calabrese Sr., his brother Nicky Calabrese, Jimmy Marcello. They solved 14 unsolved murders dating back to the 1970s. That trial, as we all know, you had Junior. He testified against his own father. He wore a wire against Frank Calabrese Sr. He got Sr. talking about murders that he shouldn't have been talking about. Then you had Frank Calabrese's brother, Nick Flip. Nicky participated in 14 murders. He gave the government information about a dozen other unsolved murders, and they gave him an open book on all kinds of people, made guys and associates affiliated with Chicago outfit. Nick Calabrese's testimony destroyed what was left of the Chicago outfit. And then to tie up a couple loose ends, they indicted Sarno, Mike Sarno's crew, right? The evidence was weak against Large. All the evidence led to high-ranking outlaw motorcycle gang member Mark Polchman, Anthony and his father and son, Anthony and Sam Volpendenzo. There wasn't a whole lot on Large, but the problem in that trial was the bombing. The government was able to prove the motive, and they had a couple low-life informants that cooperated that Large was a boss. You had Sam Volpendenzo referring to him as the boss. So the government did a pretty good job, their investigation, of tying everything on. But if I was that jury, there was definitely reasonable doubts. But again, you had Strawman, followed up with Gus Alex conviction. Alderman Rhodey in the First Ward went down. Good Ship Lollipop, Rocky and Felice's trial, Family Secrets. Those 5-6 trials is what sent all the bosses, made guys, and a lot of associates to prison. That's what destroyed the Chicago outfit. Now there's nothing left. Whatever guys are left are all legitimate now, right? Stocks, real estate, construction, bars, bakeries, restaurants, etc. But the history is pretty interesting. So tonight, let's get into it. Let's talk about Strawman real quick. This was a legendary trial back in, what was it, 1981. They had like 15 defendants and all bosses, men like Joey Aiupa, boss of Chicago outfit, his underboss, Jack Cerrone. Then he had another Chicago guy, boss of the Chinatown crew, Angelo LaPetria. Then they had Joe Lombardo, Tony Spilotro. You had a Chicago cop, Anthony Chavella. You had a couple of bosses from Kansas City. Boss and his two sons from Milwaukee. And another mob guy from Kansas City. They were charged with skimming millions of dollars of 4 mobbed up casinos. The movie Casino pretty much told the story spot on. With the exception of how Tony Spilotro, Joe Pesci there, how him and his brother were killed. As we all know by now, they weren't beat with baseball bats in the cornfield. They were lured to a house in a suburb of Chicago. They were jumped, beaten, strangled, basically beaten, stomped to death. And then they were driven out to Indiana and buried in a cornfield not too far from Joey Upa's farm. But the movie Casino told the story of the skim operation that was going on between Chicago outfit, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Cleveland, all under the Chicago outfit's umbrella. Now, it all started here at this place, Villa Capri. This is an old school Italian restaurant right there in Kansas City. Gary Jenkins does a great story on this if you want to check it out. But there was actually a war between a couple crews in Kansas City that was going on. So the agents, they bugged this place, right? And during one wiretap, they actually heard these guys, some of the bosses, talking about large amounts of money in Vegas and how the money was being distributed from Vegas to Kansas City, then to Chicago. And the large amounts of money is what caught the FBI agents' attention. And then they started tuning in further, right? And that's how the Strawman case started. That's when the investigation started, is when the agents bugged the restaurant. You actually hear them on tape talking about the skin, obviously in a little bit of code. They are also tapes where they're talking about, they've already confirmed that Lefty Rosenthal was an informant, and now they got to go to Chicago and then have it taken care of. There's tapes of that you could actually hear. So again, investigation started. They planted a bug right here at the Villa Capri in Kansas City. And there was four mobbed up hotel casinos under the Chicago Front Corporation called the Argent Corporation, right? So you had the Fremont Casino, probably the most popular, Stardust. My sister still has a couple towels from the old Stardust Hotel. Here's another hotel, the third hotel the Chicago outfit controlled. You got the Hacienda. And the fourth hotel was the Marina. But the prosecution charged these defendants with skimming $2 million from the casinos. A major part of the trial was when they talked about the Teamsters Central Pension Fund, right? How it was worth close to $1 billion. During the family secrets trial, when Mitch Mars, the prosecutor, brought this up, they brought this up as the motive in a murder, right? A murder in 1974 that we'll talk about. But the prosecution said that back in the 70s, this fund, this Teamsters pension fund, was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It was the mob's piggyback, their golden goose. They would borrow money from this Teamsters pension fund to open up hotels, casinos, bars, restaurants. They even used some of that $90 million they borrowed to pay off all their lawyers with all these trials going on, right? This was the motive in the Danny Seifert murder. That was one of the murders at the family secrets trial that Nick Calabrese testified to. He wasn't part of it, but John Theckerata, his good friend, told him about it, and the prosecution had an investigation going on, but it was unsolved. But the motive in the Danny Seifert killing was huge. He was about to blow the lid on the whole scam they had going, because they were using some of that money to funnel through some of his legitimate businesses that he had. But Danny Seifert, he knew who his friends were. He was friends with Joey Lombardo. He was very good friends with Tony Spilotro, Milwaukee Phil. He decided to cooperate. He was warned. He would not back down, just like Hoffa, very strong-willed, ballsy guy, not afraid of nobody type of guy. And he stood up to these guys. And again, because of the threat to the Teamsters pension fund, the outfit bosses weren't taking any chances, and they put a hit team together of Joe Lombardo, Frankie Calabrese. They were the two masked gunmen. Outside waiting, you had Tony Spilotro, John Theckerata, and Joey Hansen. They actually killed Danny Seifert. I did a story about that you can check out. But that's how valuable the Teamsters pension fund was to the Chicago outfit. Now, part of the Strawman trial, they talked about the cash flow, how the money went from these 4 hotel casinos in Nevada. First stop would be Kansas City, drop off cash in Kansas City. Then it would go to Chicago, Milwaukee, Cleveland. They talk about all the creative, interesting couriers that the Chicago outfit would use. A lot of it would be people they trusted, right? Their family members, their friends, associates of theirs, maybe businessmen they knew. So they would invite them out to Vegas, basically comp their entire trip, right? It was like a free vacation. They would definitely comp your hotel room, comp most of your dinners, comp all your shows. And back then, we all know they had the best entertainment back then. Sinatra, Dean Martin, Cher, Elton John. I mean, the best of the best. They would even give some of the guys a marker, like give them money they could gamble with up front. Obviously, they want these guys to gamble. Most of these guys were gamblers anyways. Then they were given duffel bags of cash that they would bring back to the bosses of the Chicago outfit. They had all kinds of different scams going on, just like in the movie Casino. I'm going to do a story coming up. We're going to talk about the couriers. We're going to talk about some of the people that were used as, say, mules, where they would receive a free vacation, in Vegas, and then in return, they would bring bags of cash home to Chicago. So we're going to talk about that. Now here, coming out of the courtroom, you got boss of Chicago outfit, Joey Aiuppa, Joey Doves. I can't think of any other mob boss in the history of La Cosa Nostra, not counting Italy, who's killed more people. This guy has green-lighted so many people. He led the Chicago outfit with fear, with violence, trying to keep a low profile. But this guy, right before he got indicted, he was pissed because they had a perfect thing set up in Vegas. They had all the right men, or the men they thought were the best men. They put him in that position. They had a beautiful scam going. Everything was going well. All they had to do was keep their head down and follow rules. We all know what happened. But right before Joey Aiuppa got indicted, he was so pissed off. He was foaming at the mouth. He told Sam Carlisi and Joe Ferriero, boss of Chicago office at the time, I want them both knocked down. 1 and 2, I don't care how you do it, just do it. That's how pissed off he was. Not only at Tony, but he was pissed off at Michael too. And one of the reasons is because they were involved in narcotics. Now, next to him coming out of the courtroom, you got underboss of Chicago outfit, somewhat of a legend, stand-up guy, legend in Elmwood Park, legend in Grand Avenue. His family today still owns most of the buildings up and down Grand Avenue. You got Jack Sarno. I've always heard he was a very sharp dresser, but a real bad drunk. But Jack Sarno stood up, would never even think of cooperating. He blew trial. He was convicted along with Joey Lombardo. But this is two of these guys coming out of court. Mob boss and underboss at the time. Excuse me. Another defendant of the Strawman trial was this guy here, Angelo the Hook, Angelo the Bull LaPetria. Angelo was the boss of the 26th Street crew, or the Chinatown crew. And this guy here is, I'll compare him to somebody like Carmine Galante or Roy DeMeo, a real sick, evil, sadistic type of guy. He actually enjoyed, kind of like a Mad Sam, not only was he a vicious killer, but he actually enjoyed the torturing that went along with killing certain guys. But he led a very vicious crew. During the family secret trial, the government talked about how the crews were different. Sometimes they would work together, but how the crews were different. For example, the Grand Avenue crew, where I live, that was the smallest crew, the most quietest crew, the best burglars and thieves in the country. That's what they were known for. Then just south of there, you have the Taylor Street crew, the Wild Bunch. They were known for obviously being wild, right? Going down to Rush Street, creating all kinds of fucking havoc, fighting, doing all kinds of crazy shit. They would wear ski masks, use shotguns, and when they would do a hit, it would be broad daylight. They didn't even care if they leave witnesses or not, New York style. Then you had the Money crew, the North Side crew, the Franzo's crew. They stopped using violence. They knew every time they beat a guy up, every time they killed a guy, it drew a lot of heat, not only by the cop, but from the feds, right? So they no longer used violence. Instead, they went legit. They went into the stock market. They bought restaurants, nightclubs, bars, bakeries, cafes, construction, real estate, made a fortune legitimately. But when the Chicago outfit lost this guy here, Angelo the Bull LaPetria, that was a major blow to their leadership. The Chinatown crew was never the same. A lot of people were glad to see him go because nobody really liked being around this guy, according to other guys. But the reason I bring him up is the Chinatown crew was the most vicious crew, meaning they were the best at killing. They were the best killing crew. If the Chicago outfit bosses had like an important guy, a high-profile target to hit, they would usually give that contract to the Chinatown crew because they knew it would get done right and get done quickly and get done the first time. Or if another crew was taking too long, or if they fucked up on a hit, they would immediately cancel it and give it to the Chinatown crew. So you had the Chinatown crew was the most vicious crew, led by obviously men like Frank Calabrese, Ronnie Jarrett, Feccarata. But Angelo LaPetria, again, one of the bosses of the 26th Street crew that got pinched during Strawman. And I heard and read that he didn't hold up too well in jail. Even though he was a mean, evil, sadistic killer out on the streets that led with an iron fist, he didn't hold up too well in jail. He definitely wasn't the same man. Now, another defendant at the Strawman case was boss of the Grand Avenue crew, Joe Lombardo. He got convicted for bribing a Nevada senator, Howard Cannon, on some kind of trucking regulation. Rather than flip and cooperated, men like this, they're not born like that. They're not cut from that kind of cloth. Joey went to prison, came out in, I think, the early 1990s. Obviously, when he was locked up, he lost some of his power, lost some of his guys. Frankie Calabrese said that Joey was supposed to be shelved, but Joey did a wonderful job of keeping a low profile, all while hanging out with his cousin Joe the Builder. But I believe if Joey Lombardo didn't get indicted, didn't get convicted in the Strawman case, he would have had much more control over Tony Spilatro and Tony Spilatro's crew. I don't think things would have got out of hand like they did. And who knows, with great leaders like this, the Chicago outfit could still have a pretty serious piece in some of those casinos. But because they fucked everything up, they gave it all away. But here's Joe Lombardo, one of the defendants at the Strawman case. He was convicted. Joey came home, as we all know, kept a low profile. And then fast forward, 2005, they went to indict him on a murder they claimed he took part in 1974. That was the killing of Danny Seifert. We just talked about that. But this is Joe Lombardo. And then another defendant that you don't really hear too much about at the Strawman case is Boss of Milwaukee. Yes, Milwaukee has a mob, believe it or not, under the Chicago Outfits umbrella. You got Frank Ballesteri and his two sons. Frank Ballesteri was 65 years old when he got indicted. His one son was 43. His other son was 34. You can see in the photo. I think Tony Spilatro was 45 years old when he got indicted. Lombardo was 54. Now here's some other defendants here. You have Nick Savella, boss of the Kansas City mob. This guy, close association with Tony Accardo, the Joey Upa, Jack Cerrone, Joe Lombardo, one of the most powerful men right here. You got Nick Savella. He was one of the defendants, and I think he was caught on tape at the Villa Capri. Another defendant, high-ranking boss of the Kansas City mob, you've got Carl Savella. You can see this guy's an old gangster going back to the probably past the early Prohibition days. Another high-ranking boss of the Kansas City mob. You got Tuffy. You got Carlo DeLuna. I believe he was on tape as well. Here's an associate of the Kansas City mob. He was involved in the scheme. You got Carl Thomas, another defendant of the Strawman case. Another defendant here, I'm forgetting his last name, Joe Augusta. He was a Chicago outfit associate. He was the liaison through the Cleveland mob as well. And this is another hotel, aside from the four, the Tropicana, that they were skimming money out of. Now, in all these federal RICO trials, the government always has a handful of top government witnesses, right? Informants, snitches, high-profile guys that as soon as they got handcuffed put on them, they decided to flip, cooperate. Some of them even wore a wire. But these guys were career criminals. Some of them were even killers. But here, during the Strawman trial, one of the government's top star witnesses was none other than the president of the Teamsters, this crooked piece of shit here, Roy Williams. This guy was a career criminal his entire life, right under Jimmy Hoffa, stepped into a gold mine, made a fortune for his friends, his family. He decided, rather than do a couple of years in prison, he decides he's going to flip and cooperate. He testified on who's who of the Chicago outfit. He broke down the organization chart in Kansas City, Cleveland, Milwaukee. He talked about the loan that they would get from the Teamsters pension fund, saying it was $90 million they would borrow. He talked about all the players involved. You can just imagine when guys like Joey Upa and Nick Savella and Carl DeLuna are 15 feet away from this guy, staring at him in the courtroom. But this was one of the guys that helped the government bring down the all the bosses. Next in line, the government called this guy, Alan Glick. Just like in the movie Casino, he was the outfit's frontman. He was the president of Argent Corporation because he had a clean record. He wasn't a mob guy. He eventually flipped. He cooperated on everything he knew about the skim, all the players involved. And he's lucky he didn't get killed. In the end, the judge found all 15 defendants at Operation Strawman guilty, sentenced them to jail. Most of the men, though, were able to come home and die at home out of jail. Some of them never made it, but it was a huge success for the United States government. That was one of the very first major mob trials that they were involved in. It was a huge victory for them. They learned a lot from that first trial, and they went full force. That's when they started going after, like I said, heavyweights, men like Gus Alex, the entire Rocky and Felice crew, Sam Carlisi crew. They took down the first ward, the Family Secrets trial. I mean, the prosecutors in Illinois are some of the best in the business. They have a 99.9 conviction rate. Now, the aftermath, obviously, just like in the movie Casino, but in real life, the aftermath, the fallout, when major mob guys are going to prison, somebody's going to get killed, right? So we'll start out with Alan Dorfman. Alan Dorfman was a Marine. A lot of people think he wasn't a tough guy, but he was. He was big time affiliated with the Chicago outfit. Now, Alan Dorfman, as we all know, was a big-time insurance executive, businessman, associated Chicago outfit, did a lot of business with Hoffa, Roy Williams, close friends with Joe Lombardo. I mean, this guy was a high-level guy. He already did a couple years for Chicago outfit without ever flipping years ago, but this time Joey Upa or Tony Accardo wasn't taking any chances. He was about to speak to a grand jury, and they were afraid he wouldn't be able to hold up at his age if he got sent into prison. So sure enough, him, Irv Weiner, met at that Purple Hilton Hotel, that famous hotel up north. I guess Irv Weiner owed Dorfman some money, so he wrote him a check, and they were having lunch. When they were walking from lunch, two masked gunmen walked up and shot and killed Alan Dorfman. I think they shot him like 7 times. Nobody shot Irv Weiner. He just stood there, froze. And the description of the bigger guy, alleged suspect, was none other than Frankie the Hitler Schweiss, Frankie Schweiss. And then the other guy, the description was a little guy. That could be Tony Spilotro, or, other people. But this was Alan Dorfman, a close friend of Joe Lombardo, and a high-level connected guy that ended up getting killed after the bosses got clipped. Another guy they had to get rid of was this guy, Jay Vandermark. He was part of the slots. He controlled the skimming of the slots. I think that was right around $7 million. He only was turning in $4 million. They found out he was stealing $3 million. This guy went on the lam. He's hiding out in a high-end, like a nursing home. They sent a couple of the Chinatown crew guys. They got a hold of him. They shot and killed him, and then they put him in a wheelchair and carried him out of the nursing home, and they ended up dumping his body somewhere in Nevada. A couple months later, Vandermark's son was killed in Nevada as well. I'm sorry, he was killed in Arizona. His son was killed in Nevada. But he was stealing money from the skim, and obviously they thought he would testify. Now, here you go. Chicago outfit guy, associate, probably the best bookmaker ever. You got Lefty Rosenthal. He was strategically put in place to control the skim, to control the casinos. Like I said, they had everybody in place, but things got out of hand. He ended up doing talk shows. He had beef with Tony Spilotro. What they didn't know then, and they found out later, he was actually an informant. And when Kansas City suspected it, they obviously confirmed it. Kansas City mob went to Chicago, obviously for approval. IUPA gave the nod, and they tried to blow this guy up. We all remember the movie Casino, but this is an actual photo of the aftermath, and it's a miracle that Lefty survived that explosion. Now here you got another co-defendant during the Strawman case. You got Tony Spilotro. There's him coming out of the Dirksen Federal Building. You can see his brother Michael there with the nice brown suit, the nice tan, and then you got his one of the best lawyers ever, Oscar Goldman. Tony Spilotro, and most people tell you it's his reason that it all came crashing down. He was trusted and liked by the bosses of the Chicago outfit. Joe Lombardo and him were real close. I heard Joey IUPA liked him and Michael. You could see pictures of Michael Spilotro, a young Michael Spilotro, hunting with Joe Lombardo. Tony Arcardo liked the Spilotro brothers. But he didn't listen. They told him to keep a low profile. Keep your head down. Enforce the skim. Make sure nobody fucks with the skim. But what does he do? He leaves Chicago, flies into Nevada, surrounded by beautiful mountains, Las Vegas. He's like in God's country, right? He realizes quickly there's nobody there to supervise him. Joey Lombardo is in prison. He can do whatever he wants. It's so easy out there, right? So what does he do? He hires all his scumbag lowlife friends from Berwyn, Oak Park, Cicero, Chicago. They come out there and they form a crew. We all know the Hole in the Wall crew. These guys were selling coke, getting high on coke, killing people without permission, robbing guests of the casino, guests of the hotel, robbing them of their cash, their jewels, beating them up, threatening them. They had pretty much every cocktail waitress, every waiter, every pit boss, every casino manager, every car dealer. Pretty much every one of them was either buying drugs off of these guys or gambling with them. Enough is enough. As we all know, he started fucking around with Lefty's wife. Word got back to Chicago. Chicago outfit bosses had enough. They were originally going to kill the Spilotro brothers out in Nevada that he talked about many times. Nick Calabrese was given an Uzi and a couple of grenades. He took a train from Union Station all the way to Nevada with an Uzi and a grenade. 2 grenades and an Uzi. And then he met other members of the hit team out there. They were originally going to kill the Spilotros out in Nevada. They couldn't really pull it off. And we all know what happened. These 2 guys were lured to a house in Bensonville, which is right outside over here, and brutally beaten, stomped to death. But hopefully he found peace with his maker. But this little guy right here is pretty much one of the main reasons Chicago outfit lost everything in Nevada. If it wasn't for him, he would have just behaved himself and kept more of a lower profile and not pissed off all the agents, all the cops. Chicago outfit could still have a lot of power out there, but everything's gone. And who knows how many other people, Chicago outfit and Tony Spilotro and him and his crew, how many guys were killed, right? How many guys that couldn't pay, drug deals that went bad, drug users that couldn't pay, deadbeat gamblers that couldn't pay, people that got out of line. Who knows how many holes there are in that desert out there. And then when they started, these barrels started washing up in Lake Mead, they started finding several victims of the aftermath of the Strawman case. I'm not sure how many people were killed, but the Strawman case, that's sent away again. When guys like Joe Lombardo go away, Joey Aiuppa, Jack Cerrone, you lose a lot of power. When Joey Lombardo went away, things weren't the same when he came home. He lost a lot of power. The Grand Avenue crew, first of all, got exposed, and it just wasn't the same. You had Jimmy Kozel who took over. I mean, it was still a force to be reckoned with. But again, when the Chinatown crew loses Angela Hook, you lose Jack Cerrone out of Elmwood Park. You lose guys like Joe Aiuppa. When you guys like Rocky and Felice, I mean Jimmy Marcel, when you lose Carlisi, when you lose leaders like that, everything just cracks and crumbles. But hey, kudos to the government, kudos to the FBI. These guys are experts at what they do. Obviously, they have untapped resources, untapped funds. But without the government's rats and snitches, they would have no cases. None of these men that we're talking about would be in jail if it wasn't for the government's informants. Take care, everybody. Have a good weekend. Enough said. If you like my Chicago mob trials, hit the like button, subscribe. Please subscribe. I need more subscribers. Share with your friends. I appreciate all the comments. And don't forget, Buddy Guy, downtown Chicago, this Sunday. Thank you.